The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Since many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as those who were eyewitnesses from the beginning and ministers of the Word have handed them down to us, I too have decided, after investigating everything accurately and anew, to write it down in an orderly sequence for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may realize the certainty of the teachings you have received. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and the news of him spread throughout the whole region. He taught in their synagogues and was praised by all. He went to Nazareth, where he had grown up, and went according to his custom into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. He stood up to read and was handed a scroll of the prophet Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the passage where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord." Rolling up the scroll, he handed it back to the attendant and sat down, and all eyes in the synagogue looked intently at him. He said to them, "Today this scripture passage is fulfilled in your hearing." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I'll never forget the first time that I broke into tears while presiding over a burial. I felt like a failure as a priest. I was supposed to be the strong one for this young married couple. It was one of the first couples that I had married. She found out she was pregnant with twins, and about halfway through the pregnancy, she was told that if she didn't abort one, that both would probably die. But she said that she wanted them to at least have 9 safe months in her womb if they weren't going to have safety in the world afterwards. And they were both born stillborn. I got to the cemetery early. When I saw the couple get out of their car carrying the 2 little white caskets down the hill, I broke into tears as I thought what dignity that young couple gave to those 2 young infants. Our youth group was supposed to go with the bishop and many others to Washington this week to March for Life. The trip was canceled due to weather, as you know, so I thought it might be a good week for all of us to focus on the sanctity of all life from the moment of conception to natural death. Many of we priests put off this homily for fear that we may offend some women, or the people may think we're taking one political side or the other. But trust me, I'm not trying to do either. The most moving and powerful confessions I hear are listening to the pain of a woman who's been carrying around the guilt and agony of having an abortion for years, thinking that God could never forgive her. God forgives and feels all of our pain. Pope John Paul II said there is no sin too great for God's loving mercy. And believe me, there are men who carry the same guilt. 43 years ago, the Roe v. Wade decision removed the government's obligation to protect lives of the unborn. The protection of all people's right to life is one of the highest duties of any government. From the earlier stages of pregnancy, an unborn baby is now proven to have DNA, a heart, a brain, a blood type, and so on. The point is that that fetus is a human being, not just by religious belief anymore, but now by scientific and biological proof. And when Christ was on this earth, he said, however we treat the least among us is the way that we treat him. This particularly applies to the innocent unborn. We fail in that duty whenever we enable abortion in any way. By having one, by paying for one, or even not trying to talk someone out of having one. I'm embarrassed to think back of my days at Delta when one of my co-workers was bragging about the number of abortions that he'd paid for in the past few years, and I never spoke up. Most of we Catholics are pretty clear on the sanctity of life, especially when it comes to abortion. But do we take the same stance on the death penalty, which is also the taking of a human life? We must never forget that God is the author of all life. God alone can create life, and God alone can take life. My view on the death penalty changed 12 years ago when I went down to Eddyville with Bishop Foys and visited with some of the people on death row. Bishop Foys was meeting with some of the other bishops to discuss what they could do about the death penalty. In the free time, I went over and visited with the inmates. Believe me, when I walked out of that prison, the whole world and my view on the death penalty looked totally different. The inmates on death row prepared the Mass. They did the readings and chose the readings. They wrote petitions that would have brought you to tears. At the end of the Mass, one of the inmates came up to me and said, "Father, I ask you to forgive me. I couldn't go to communion because I couldn't shake the hand of the man next to me because he's the one who raped and killed my mother and sister. And I'm here for trying to kill him." At that moment, I realized that those men and women never had a chance from birth. They had no other way that they knew to live, was survival of the fittest, learned behavior. Pope Francis, in 2013, speaking in Britain on the Annual Day of Life, said that all life has inestimable value. Even the weakest, the most vulnerable, the sick, the old, the unborn, the poor, are all masterpieces of God's loving creation, made in God's own image, destined to live forever, deserving the utmost reverence and respect. All human beings. And he goes on to say, in this year of mercy, we all need to reach out to anyone that we know is dealing with the guilt of an abortion. And we have the resources right here in our diocese through Project Rachel. There are some of these brochures back there. And it's not just reaching out to the mother and fathers of abortion, to their parents, to the brothers and sisters, to anyone who's dealing with it through Project Rachel. Matthew Kelly says in his book, A Call to Joy, "It will never be safe to walk down the street until we reassess our attitude toward life. Until life within the womb of a mother is safe, life outside the womb in this world of ours will never again be safe." Abortion is the ultimate sign that humanity has failed to understand that life is precious and sacred, and that the human person is made up of body and soul. Think about it. If someone took to the streets of New York City today with an automatic weapon and killed 4,000 people, it would make the front pages of every newspaper in the world. Yet every day of the year, 4,000 abortions are committed in our country. Thank God the number is down in the last few years. It used to be 4,500 to 5,000. But thanks to the work of many people like you, the numbers are coming down. Yet still, 4,000 innocent souls are sent prematurely into eternity because their life, which is sacred, is considered inconvenient. And hardly a word is spoken for these innocent little ones. Matthew Kelly goes on to say, Abortion not only kills an unborn child, it breeds a mentality that all life is disposable. It breeds a mentality that if it's inconvenient, kill it. What happens if one day you become inconvenient to someone? Once upon a time, America was a great country because it stood for and represented all that was good and true. America will be a great country again when it once more begins to stand up for what is good and true. The prosperity of any nation depends upon this, and it's up to us, the citizens of this great country of freedom. So ask yourself today, what are you doing to protect the sanctity of all life? If you get a chance, thank your parents, living or dead, for giving you the wonderful gift of life.